I don't know. Jesus just says, don't be anxious. Just don't. And that doesn't always help, does it? Welcome to Bibletime, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. We're actually going to just jump straight into it, reading the Bible. And we are in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, starting in verse 13. So I'm going to jump right in. You're going to see it right there on the screen. You're going to hear it. If you have a Bible and you want to read along with me and cut it up with a pen or something, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, you can watch right here, and let's read this together. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man," that you wish we had like tone of voice sometimes. "Man, who made me judge?" Like, what was he saying? Like, "Man, who made me judge and arbitrator over you?" I wonder what his tone was like. Okay, "Man, who made me judge and arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Okay. Be on guard. Oops. Be on your guard against covetousness. Desiring to have somebody else's things. That's what that means. Stuff. It's all about stuff. Boy, that's relevant to our society, isn't it? For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them a parable. Anytime Jesus tells a parable, I pay attention because it's not just an account, a historical account of what happened. It's him making up every detail off the top of his head for a purpose. So let's see what Jesus is making up. The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." And he said, "I will do this. I will tear down my barns, and I will build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul," soul? Oh man, this is funny. "And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry." Yeah. But God said, now remember, this is a parable. Jesus is making this up, making up a story, and inside of his story is a man, and inside of his story is God, but God saying, in response to this man and what he says to his own soul. But God said to him, "Fool, this night your soul," you remember, the one you're talking to, "your soul will be required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" And then Jesus lays down his point of the story. Story over. "So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." So here's the story. And he says, so this is what it's going to be like for you if... And then he says two things. And it's important to catch both of them, because sometimes, if you're not careful, you're gonna lean on one and not the other. At least I've heard it that way before. I don't know if you ever have, but so it is for the one who lays up treasure for himself. But it's not a period, even though sometimes maybe people that are against having finances, against having wealth, against having treasures. But Jesus is making a two-part statement here. And granted, everything above about his parable is pretty serious. I mean, the conclusion of the story that Jesus made up is that God, that this guy died, and his soul moved on and all of his stuff was left behind. Like, it's a pretty serious story, especially, one that you're making up to make a point. It's a serious story. But he says, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. In other words, if you don't want this to be your fate, you need to be rich towards God, even if you have treasure for yourself. That if your treasure is just for yourself, it's going to be a very bad place to be and potentially dangerous. But even if you have things for yourself or things that you're enjoying, if you are rich towards God, that's what he's asking of us. He's asking of us not to just be selfish for ourselves, but to be rich towards God. And so, for me, it's a constant challenge. Passages like this and thinking about subjects like this, because as much as people in our nation compare to either celebrities or the wealthy or even just other people in our nation, I just know that based on a comparative analysis against the population of the world in general at this day and age, or the population of the world throughout all of history, I know that myself and probably anybody that would ever end up on this video, the truth is that we live in the top 5% of the wealthiest people to ever live, in terms of not just how much money we have, but generally the possessions that we have or have access to, the food, the shelter, the clothing, the entertainment, the things that we have access to. If you just compile it all, even if your actual physical bank account has no money in it, if you were to quantify the lifestyle that we live, again, speaking to who I would presume would ever end up on a video like this, if you were to quantify it, the truth is that we are so wealthy. And so knowing that reality, and knowing that even within that reality, for some of the poorest people in America still being wealthy, knowing that even in light of that I myself have been able to experience a very privileged and blessed life, no denying it, and all credit to God, but it definitely makes me, consider, am I being rich towards God? Am I, and not just reluctantly, not just out of duty or obligation, even though there's honor in some of those things for sure, but I think the highest motivation is a genuine desire within my own soul to just give and serve and to be rich towards God and his kingdom and other people, to share freely of any possession that I have, to not hoard, not be selfish, not think about just me and my comfort and my family, but to think about other people, to serve other people, and to share any blessing that God's given us. So, some thoughts. Let's move on. And he said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his lifespan? If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Faith matters. And do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be worried. For all the nations of the world seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. It is interesting that he starts this. Do not be anxious about your life. This is an interesting subject to me, because I think it seems to be particularly relevant in our day and time, not just in the season that I'm filming this within, which is COVID-19 season. Don't know when you're watching this, but that's when this is being filmed. And if you are living it right now, or you look back on it, my guess is you know exactly, what it's like to feel the fear, the anxiety, the chaos of the world right now. It's a worldwide pandemic, and so people are feeling that, of course, right now. But I think even before COVID and this particular issue, our society in the 21st century has a lot of depression, anxiety, stress. We live in a fast-paced world, and it's a very real thing. I think that there's different levels to it, but I've tasted it, felt it myself. So what's interesting to me about this passage is he just simply says, "Do not be anxious." And so, to be honest, Jesus, I kind of got some issues with that. Like, I don't know what to do with that, Jesus. Like, I know these facts. I have considered. And I'm not saying that I personally am struggling with anxiety right now. In fact, I don't think I really am. I think I'm actually in a pretty healthy space. But I have in the past, and I know other people that have. And I know people that, for some people it's more consistent and chronic in their life. I know some people it's more occasional. I think chronic means ongoing, but either way, ongoing and consistent. And for some people it's occasional. And for me it's happened at different times. So maybe more intermittent for me. But what's always been interesting about the times that I've physically experienced it, because if you've ever experienced true anxiety, which is different than just kind of worrying about something, it's at least for me, I don't know, maybe it's different for other people, but it's it's not just a thought in your head. It's all up in your gut, not just butterflies, but just a thing. I think if you've experienced it, But it's just so interesting that it's such a thing that surely God knows what it's like, but it is such a thing that just mentally considering something doesn't always fix it. In the sense that if you're experiencing anxiety or depression, you can't just convince yourself out of it. You can't just remember some facts in your mind and be like, oh yeah, like, yeah, no, I should be happy right now. At least in my experience, not only with myself, but with people that I've talked to, most of the time people know that they should be happy. Say it's depression, that they know, like, man, I know I don't have a reason to feel depressed. I know I don't have, like, I should be happy because there's this and this and this and this and it's so many blessings. But acknowledging those things intellectually doesn't just fix the feeling and the experience. And so I think that, like, depression and anxiety are really related in that. And again, I'm not talking about just being sad or worrying. I'm talking about, like, depression and anxiety. And so, all to say, I'm sitting here reading my Bible just like you, and we're coming across a passage like this, and we have a Savior that just simply says, don't be anxious. Don't be anxious about your life, about what you eat, what you wear. And then he goes on to express some reasons why, which are definitely good. Like, we should consider, the reasons why not. And there's obviously a place for intellectual, like, understanding and, like, okay, I get this. Like, come on, let's wrap my head around this. I'm not thinking right. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just deeper. And so I guess I say all that not to put, like, questions in you as to, like, well, can Jesus be trusted? But to just let you know that, like, hey, it's okay if we're wrestling with what the Word says and with our experience. And it's okay if we wrestle with these things. And we're wondering, like, God, help me understand, help me to put this into practice, help me to know how you want me to live into what you're calling us to. And I don't know all the answers. I just know this, that God is worthy of our faith, that I do trust him. And if I'm gonna have either a lot or a little of something, I really want to try and have a lot of it when comes to faith. And so I'm gonna strive to put my trust in him, even in the seasons when I'm feeling this. For my friends that are going through this, or whatever it is, fear, anxiety, depression, struggle. And I think that this last line is just kind of a beautiful, tie together for maybe this reading. And it says, seek the kingdom and these things will be added to you. The Gospel of Matthew says, seek first the kingdom. And I like both the sentences. I really like Matthew, like just this idea that there's a priority, and I assume that this is what's meant in this gospel as well. That after all this being said, because, like, what I guess what we're looking for here is not just somebody, even Jesus, to just say don't do that. Because sometimes, especially something like anxiety, like we're probably telling ourselves that already. Like, come on, Craig, don't be like that. Like, don't, but you can't just talk yourself out of it. And so what I love about this last line is it's the practical antidote, I guess. It's the practical medicine. That goes beyond just saying don't do something. It's actually what I think gives power to his request not to be anxious, because he knew at the end of his message here that he's going to give the key ingredient, which is to seek the kingdom with all that you are, to seek God first. And when you seek his kingdom first, you can learn and grow and develop in trusting him for all of these things, food and clothing, and really for any area of your life. And as we seek him first, he helps through his Spirit for us to battle against anxiety or depression or whatever our battle is. For he is a present help in time of need. And so I don't know what you're going through. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it's none of those things. But we're all human, and we all have issues at times. Some of us more issues than others, some of us more often than others. But we're all human here. We're in the same boat. And so I hope that you would receive this text and take it to the Holy Spirit and spend some time in prayer. As for me, this is an encouragement here. Seek his kingdom first. Seek his kingdom first. Seek his kingdom first. When it comes to my finances, seek his kingdom first. When it comes to how I spend my time, seek his kingdom first. When it comes to what I do with my energy and my focus, seek his kingdom first. His kingdom is worth it. He is worth it. And it's going to be better for us in the end. So that's my thoughts for today. Thanks for hanging with me so long. Lots of Bible today. And that's a good thing. I hope to see you again tomorrow. God bless.